Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight's story is about a colony that called for help, and the help that arrived wasn't rescue, it was erasure. A world silenced, a signal buried, and a decision that may have changed humanity forever. If you enjoy slow burn cosmic horror like this, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's waiting in the dark. Alright, let's dive into today's story. The wind on Varus 9 did not sound like wind. It moved through the colony's hollow transit towers in slow, deliberate currents, as if testing the geometry of the structures. Solar membranes flapped in uneven rhythms. Emergency lights blinked in corridors where no one walked. Moss native to the planet's engineered biosphere had begun climbing the outer walls of habitation domes, threading through cracks in polymer glass. The colony had not been abandoned long enough to decay naturally. Something else had accelerated the silence. I remember standing on the roof of Biolab 3 the day the last shuttle failed to launch. The sky was a pale, metallic blue. Thin atmosphere, refracting light from Varus 9's dim star into a washed spectrum. Even then, I could feel it. That vibration, not in my ears, in my teeth, in the marrow of my bones. It started 3 weeks after excavation. We had unearthed it beneath the Eastern Expansion site, a structure that did not register as metal, stone, or organic composite. It responded to proximity, not with light, not with heat, with alignment. The first symptom was shared dreams. Colonists reported identical images, endless corridors folding into one another, angles that refused to resolve. We dismissed it as suggestion bias, group hysteria, environmental stress. Then came the synchronization. 2 engineers stopped mid-argument and began speaking in the same tone, finishing each other's sentences. Not playfully, precisely, as if reading from a script neither remembered writing. I signed off on continued study. I bypassed extended spectral containment because I believed we were witnessing first contact. I was wrong, or maybe I was too right. By the time violence began, it wasn't chaotic. It was organized. People gathered in clusters. The closer they stood, the calmer they became. When separated, they deteriorated. Panic, aggression, confusion. Isolation hurt them. Togetherness stabilized them. Earth received my transmission on day 19. I told them it wasn't a pathogen. I told them it was neurological entrainment. I told them we needed observers, xenocognitive specialists, not quarantine fleets. 3 days later, something entered orbit. I heard it before I saw it. A low hum distinct from the artifact's resonance, mechanical, structured, a descending vector. Hope is dangerous in a place like Varus 9. The ship cut through the sky like a surgical instrument, angular, sterile. Its hull bore no colony insignia, no civilian rescue markings, only the black sigil of expansion authority containment. It landed beyond the central plaza. I approached from the hydroponics wing, keeping distance from the synchronized clusters that now lingered near the excavation pit. They no longer chased me. They watched. When the hatch opened, 5 figures emerged in sealed biohazard exosuits, matte white, reflective visors obscuring faces. No hesitation in their stride. One stepped forward. "Dr. Samuel Voss," the suit's external speaker stated. Not asked. "Yes. Commander Zephyr, Containment and Erasure Division." Erasure. The word felt heavier than the suit he wore. "You received my data logs," I said. "You know this isn't viral. We have reviewed your transmissions. And? There will be no rescue operation." The wind threaded between us. Behind me, near the excavation ridge, a cluster of colonists stood unnaturally still. 6 of them, shoulder to shoulder. Their heads tilted slightly in unison. Zephyr followed my gaze. "Cognitive contamination confirmed," he said. "Phase 1 sterilization begins in 6 hours. My pulse faltered. Sterilization of what? The colony. I stepped forward before I realized I had moved. There are survivors, Incorrect. They're not dead. They're adapting. The commander's visor reflected my own image back at me, smaller, distorted. Individual autonomy has collapsed, he replied. That constitutes loss. Behind him, another suited figure hesitated, slightly shorter, his posture less rigid, ensign insignia on the shoulder plate. He turned his helmet fractionally toward the cluster of colonists, toward the excavation site beyond. The vibration pulsed again, stronger. The artifact lay beneath reinforced shielding, but I could feel it from here, a harmonic field radiating outward, not louder, denser. You don't understand it, I said. It doesn't control them. It synchronizes them. The violence happened during separation phases, when they were isolated. Zephyr remained motionless. Our mandate is preservation of species integrity. You're about to destroy something unprecedented. Yes. There was no anger in his voice, no cruelty, just doctrine. I realized then that Earth had not sent scientists. They had sent certainty. The other suited figure finally spoke. His voice carried less modulation, human beneath the filter. Sir, he said quietly to Zephyr. The neural readings from orbit show pattern stabilization. It's organized. Zephyr did not look at him. Ensign Dario, you will maintain operational focus. Dario. I fixed the name in my memory. The cluster near the excavation pit shifted, not forward, not backward, closer together, as if bracing. The air thickened with that low harmonic pressure. My vision shimmered at the edges, faint geometric afterimages when I blinked. Zephyr activated a wrist display. A projection formed between us. Tactical grid of the colony. Red sectors marked habitation zones. Phase 1, perimeter lockdown, he stated. Phase 2, neural disruption sweep. Phase 3, artifact demolition. No, I said. It came out weaker than I intended. You're afraid of it, I continued, forcing steadiness. Not because it's killing us, because it's changing us. Zephyr turned slightly toward me. Doctor, he said, unity at the cost of self is extinction. Behind him, Dario's visor flickered as he glanced again toward the synchronized group. They were no longer staring at me. They were staring at the cleanup crew, and for the first time since the outbreak began, I felt something from them that wasn't hunger or panic. It was recognition. The vibration deepened, not louder, closer, as if something beneath the colony had shifted its attention upward. Zephyr's squad spread out in silent formation. The sky above Verus 9 dimmed as the ship's shadow moved across the plaza, and in that growing shade, I understood something terrible. The artifact had not been reacting to us. It had been waiting for something else to arrive. The first warning came as a taste, not metallic, not bitter. A dry electrical flatness that coated my tongue the way dust does after a storm, except there hadn't been storms on Verus 9 since the atmospheric governors went half-blind and started making their own decisions. I watched Zephyr's team fan out across the central plaza with the calm efficiency of people who had done this before. They moved like a diagram. No wasted gestures, no hurried glances. Their suit lamps swept doorways, rooftops, the dark seams between buildings where the colony's silence collected. They were not looking for survivors. They were mapping where to remove them. I backed away toward the hydroponics wing, not running. Running would draw eyes. The synchronized clusters didn't chase anymore, but they noticed motion the way a single organism notices a twitch in one limb. The hum inside my bones thickened, almost syrupy. When I blinked, the afterimage of Zephyr's ship lingered too long, the outline repeating in faint nested angles, as if my eyes couldn't agree on what shape it was. I pressed my thumb and forefinger hard into my eyelids until the geometry faded. Dr. Voss, Zephyr's voice came through my combead. He had patched into the colony network without asking, like the place already belonged to him. Return to the plaza. You will be contained for your own safety. Contained, as if I were a sample. I didn't answer. I yanked the bead out and crushed it under my boot. A petty act, a stupid act. But I needed one moment where my will still mattered. In the hydroponics wing, the air was wet and warm, thick with plant respiration. Rows of engineered greens drooped under low light. The colony had been proud of this place. Fresh food was proof that we weren't just squatting on alien soil. We were building a future. Now the grow lamps flickered like tired eyelids, and in the reflective moisture on the leaves I saw movement behind me that wasn't there. My own outline, repeated. Like a second Sam Voss, half a step out of sync. I turned fast. Nothing, only the hum in my teeth. I pushed deeper into the wing, toward the service corridor that led to Biolab 3. The doors still recognized my ID tag. Most systems did. The colony's automation had not yet decided I was dead. As I moved, I listened for the infected, for the feral hunger I'd once feared. But the colony wasn't full of screams anymore. It was full of pauses, spaces where a conversation should have been, places where footsteps should have echoed. It made the rare sounds, distant metal settling, a vent coughing, a drone's rotor whining, feel like intrusions into something sacred. At the end of the corridor, the emergency console glowed. I keyed in my credentials and pulled up internal sensors. Most camera feeds were static. Others showed empty halls. A few still functioned, grainy, tinted green from degraded optics. One feed caught my breath. Near, the excavation site, the synchronized cluster had grown. Not by recruits stumbling in, by people emerging from buildings and converging in slow, deliberate lines. They walked without urgency, without fear, each person matching the pace of the others, their heads angled toward the pit, like pilgrimage. Then another feed, Central Plaza. Zephyr's unit had deployed 2 tripod devices. They looked like insect legs around a polished sphere. The sphere pulsed with faint blue light. Neural disruptors. Phase 2. Hardware. My throat tightened. Those pulses wouldn't just stun, they would shear patterned neural activity, wipe synchronized perception, clean the way fire wipes a page. I had seen reports of their use during the Jovian outbreak decades ago. Rumors more than data. Entire habitats quieted in minutes. Survivors came out unable to recognize their own families. Some never regained speech. Earth called it mercy. I called it annihilation with clean hands. A new feed blinked online, not from my system, from theirs. Zephyr had hooked into every remaining camera and overlaid his own viewpoint. A map appeared, sectors flashing, target zones highlighted, hydroponics, medbay, habitat domes, Biolab 3, my location. He knew exactly where I was. The console chimed softly, an incoming local ping, not expansion authority encryption, internal suit-to-suit, a request. Someone was trying to contact me without using Zephyr's channel. I hesitated, then accepted. A face did not appear, only a voice, low and slightly strained, filtered but not fully masked. Dr. Voss, this is Ensign Dario. I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath. You shouldn't be talking to me. I shouldn't be talking to you, he agreed. But you were right about one thing. Only one. A pause. In it, I heard something else. A faint tremor, like a hand brushing the edge of a wine glass. The hum. It was coming through his mic. He was hearing it too. The patterns from orbit, Dario said. They're not random. They're coherent, like a signal locking into phase. That's what I've been trying to tell you, I said, keeping my voice steady. They're stabilizing when they're together. And when we disrupt them, he said slowly, we might be doing something worse than killing them. I leaned closer to the console, lowering my tone. Why are you telling me this? Another pause. Longer. Because the commander doesn't care, Dario said. He's following protocol like it's scripture. But if you're right, If this isn't an outbreak, then our mission isn't containment. It's execution, I finished. Dario exhaled. Yeah. My chest tightened with something dangerous and bright. Hope again. I hated it. Listen, I said. If you want to understand it, meet me at Biolab 3. There are logs you haven't seen, spectral scans, neural, entrainment models. I can show you how it spreads. I can't, he said immediately. Zephyr has us on squad lock. If I break formation, he'll know. Then don't break it, I said. Redirect. Silence. You want me to sabotage my own unit? Dario said. I want you to choose, I replied. Because your unit is about to wipe a colony off the map without learning anything. And if Varus 9 is the first place this has happened, it won't be the last. The hum surged. I felt it in my ribs, a vibration that made my vision shimmer. For a moment, the corridor walls looked too close together, bending inward as if the building were breathing. I steadied myself against the console. On the camera feed, Zephyr raised a hand. One of the disruptor spheres brightened. Phase 2 beginning early. No, I whispered. The map flickered. A countdown appeared on Zephyr's overlay. 5 minutes. I looked back to the excavation feed. The synchronized cluster had formed a ring now. Bodies shoulder to shoulder. Faces turned inward toward the pit, eyes open but unfocused, as if watching something below that cameras couldn't see. Then, as the disruptor sphere in the plaza brightened again, the ring moved. Not away, toward the center, as if bracing for impact, as if they knew what was coming. Dario's voice returned, tight. Doctor, I'm seeing movement near your sector. Zephyr's sending someone, I said. Not us, Dario whispered. My blood went cold. In the hydroponics wing behind the rows of drooping greens, something shifted with synchronized precision. Not a stumble, not a rush, a controlled step. Then another. A figure emerged into the grow light. A colonist. Face gaunt, eyes too still. He raised his head, and for the first time in weeks, someone spoke to me without snarling. Sam, he said. But the voice wasn't his. It was layered. Several voices threaded together in one mouth. We felt the ship, the chorus said softly. It is not here for you. I backed up until my shoulder hit the wall. What are you? I managed. The colonist tilted his head, and his smile was gentle in a way that made me want to scream. We are what remains when you stop being alone, the chorus replied. And now the cutters have come. The disruptor sphere on the plaza feed flared. The countdown hit 0, and the colony's air, every molecule of it, seemed to tense, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. The neural disruption sweep didn't announce itself with sound. It announced itself with absence. Every ambient system in the colony, fans, pumps, distant relays, stuttered at once, as if a giant hand had briefly covered the mouth of Varus 9. The grow lamps in hydroponics dimmed to a sickly amber. The condensation on the leaves stopped shimmering, not because it froze, but because my eyes couldn't agree on how light should behave. Then the pulse arrived. It slid through my skull like a cold blade, not painful at first, just reorganizing. The air tasted of ozone again. My thoughts lost their edges. For half a heartbeat, I forgot the shape of my own name. I clutched the wall, nails scraping polymer. Across from me, the colonist, the chorus wearing a familiar face, did not flinch. His pupils narrowed in perfect symmetry. His posture tightened, like a structure bracing against wind. We heard it, he said, and the layered voices stayed calm. You will not survive. Their mercy. On the camera overlay, the plaza washed out in pale static. Then the feed stabilized. Zephyr and his unit stood unmoving, the disruptor sphere glowing with an internal blue that made their suits look like bones under ice. Behind them, the colony's streets were empty. Too empty. I switched feeds. Habitation domes, med bay, the east transit spine. People were down. Some sprawled where they'd been standing, limbs twisted, as if their bodies had been set down carelessly by a bored god. Others sat upright, hands in their laps, blinking slowly like newborns. No blood, no screams, no frenzy, just silence. My stomach lurched as the implications assembled themselves. Zephyr hadn't targeted the infected. He targeted everything with a human brain. The chorus beside me stepped closer through the rows of greens, boots careful, almost respectful. "You cut into the buried shape," it said. "You woke the bridge." "I didn't mean to," I forced out. The pulse still echoed in my head, leaving my thoughts slightly delayed, like my mind was walking through water. The colonist's face, Jalen, I remembered, an agricultural tech who used to complain about nutrient ratios, softened with something that looked like pity. "You did," the chorus replied, as if intention didn't matter. "The bridge is not cruel. It is not kind. It is simply older than your loneliness." I swallowed, trying to hold on to something familiar. "Why were you violent? Why did people—" My voice cracked. "Why did they eat each other?" The chorus blinked, and for a moment the layered voices misaligned, like an old recording slipping. "Separation," it said. "You tore minds apart and called it safety. You isolated, you panicked. The bridge offered coherence, you fought it. In the gap between selves, hunger grew, fear grew, rage grew." It tilted its head again. That gentle smile returned. "When you are one, there is no need to consume." The words should have comforted me. They didn't, because I could see what Zephyr would see. A colony turning into something that didn't fit the definition of human. My console chimed, a harsh, unfamiliar alert. "Expansion authority override." A message pushed into every remaining screen. "Citizenry of Virus 9. You are under quarantine enforcement. Remain stationary. Resistance will be terminated." Zephyr's voice followed, calm and amplified, transmitted through the colony's public address system. "Dr. Samuel Voss, you will surrender yourself at the Central Plaza within 10 minutes. All persons found outside designated zones will be considered contaminated and neutralized." The chorus's eyes shifted past me, toward the corridor leading to Biolab 3, as if it could see through walls. "He will cut the bridge," it said. "He will burn the buried shape. He will sterilize your history until even your names are ash." I fought to steady my breathing. My hands shook, not from fear alone, but from residual disruption. The pulse had hit me too. I could feel it still, a thin numbness across my thoughts. "Dario," I whispered, remembering the open channel. I pulled up the comm interface again, bypassing Zephyr's network. "Dario, do you copy?" A beat. Then his voice, quieter than before, threaded through static. "I'm here." "What did he just do?" I asked. "That sweep. He dropped everyone." "It was broad," Dario said, and I heard strain now, like he was speaking while moving. "He told us it would only affect active synchronized patterns. But it hit civilians too. People who weren't in clusters." "So you're seeing it," I said. "I'm seeing it," he replied. "And I'm seeing something else." My pulse jumped. "What?" "The ones near the excavation," Dario said. "They didn't go down. They steadied, like they expected it." The chorus beside me let out a slow exhale through Jalen's mouth. Not relief. Confirmation. "Because the bridge is not in their skulls alone," it said. "It is beneath you." A thought came, sharp despite the numbness. "Biolab 3, I told Dario. "Meet me there. I have the original excavation telemetry. Not the clean summaries we sent Earth, the raw. It shows the artifact isn't just an object." "It's a system," Dario murmured, finishing my thought like he'd already walked that path. "Yes," I said. "And Zephyr's about to demolish it." Dario hesitated. "Zephyr just rerouted my unit to your sector. He wants you alive long enough to confirm." Then he'll erase you with the rest. Can you divert them? I can delay, Dario said. And I heard something click, maybe a latch, maybe a weapon setting. But Sam, if I break squad lock, he'll flag me as compromised. You already are, I said. If you're still human. Silence. Then softly. Tell me where. Swallowed. Service tunnel under hydroponics. Access panel marked H17. It leads straight to Biolab 3's sub-level. I know it, Dario said. We trained on colony layouts. Of course they did. Cleanup crews didn't arrive blind. I killed the channel and turned back to the chorus. If Zephyr is right, I said, choosing my words carefully, then what you're becoming is a threat to everyone beyond this planet. The chorus studied me with Jalen's eyes, and for a moment I saw something behind the calm, an immense pressure like an ocean held behind glass. We do not travel, it said. We anchor. What does that mean? It stepped closer until I could see the faint tremor in the colonist's skin, as if invisible current ran through his muscles. The bridge requires proximity, the chorus said. It grows where minds are close. Your ships scatter you into stars. Your distance is your armor. My mind raced. So, Earth is afraid of a thing that can't spread off-world. The chorus smiled again, almost sadly. Earth is afraid, it said, of learning that distance is a disease. My throat tightened. The words landed too cleanly, too precisely, as if the artifact, or the bridge, had been building that sentence for a long time. The public address system crackled once more. 10 minutes, Zephyr repeated. This is your final warning. I looked at the camera feeds again. In the plaza, one of Zephyr's units lifted a rifle-like tool from a sealed case. Its barrel was ringed with emitter coils. Not a gun, a cutter, a device meant to sever and cauterize. In another feed, through a hallway camera, I saw movement. 3 cleanup crew suits advancing toward hydroponics, their steps perfectly spaced. Their suit lights were off. They were using thermal overlays, hunting by body heat. I backed away into the service corridor, then stopped. The chorus didn't follow. It stood among the plants, like a statue, hands loose at its sides. Are you going to stop them? I asked. The layered voices softened. We are not an army. You can speak through people, I said. You can move them. We can join, it corrected gently. Not command. I stared at it, trying to understand. The chorus tilted its head. You still believe power is something you hold alone, it said. That is why you fear us. Then it took one slow step back into the greenery, and the grow lamps flickered, briefly aligning into a pattern that made my eyes ache. A nested spiral, impossible angles folding inward. A map, not of the colony, of something beneath it. And in that moment, I knew the artifact wasn't merely buried under Varus 9. Varus 9 had been built on top of it like a lid. The bridge had been here long before we arrived. We hadn't discovered it. We had finally given it enough minds to wake. I pulled open the H17 panel and climbed down into the service tunnel, the air turning colder with each rung. Behind me, somewhere above, the sterile footsteps of the cleanup crew drew closer, steady, patient, inevitable. And beneath that, deeper, the harmonic vibration thickened, not like a sound, like a presence, waiting for the cutter to touch it. The service tunnel smelled of old insulation and damp mineral dust. It was never meant for people, only for maintenance drones and thin cables that carried life quietly between systems. I moved crouched, palms sliding along the cold metal floor as the ladder hatch sealed above me with a soft, hydraulic sigh. Darkness swallowed the last of the grow lights. Only the faint emergency strips along the tunnel base remained, glowing a tired blue. And beneath everything, beneath my breath, beneath the distant hum of failing infrastructure, the harmonic resonance deepened, not louder, closer, as if the planet itself were inhaling. I crawled forward until the tunnel widened enough to stand. Biolab 3's sub-level access door waited at the far end, sealed by biometric lock. My reflection in its brushed surface looked wrong, slightly doubled, like two versions of me were negotiating which one should be dominant. I pressed my hand to the scanner. For a moment, nothing. Then, the door slid open. Inside, Biolab 3 was intact. Consoles powered. Holographic displays idling with rotating datasets I had once studied with academic fascination. Now they looked like confession transcripts. I moved to the central terminal and keyed in the excavation logs. Raw telemetry flooded the screen. Spatial density anomalies, non-Euclidean readings that we had labeled instrument error during early scans. We had been so eager, so certain that anything buried beneath Verus 9 must be a relic. It was not a relic. It was infrastructure. The artifact was only the visible node, a protrusion. The real structure extended downward, a lattice of matter not fully in phase with our dimension, threading through kilometers of crust. The more I overlaid the data, the clearer it became. It wasn't a device broadcasting outward. It was a receiver stabilizing something that already existed. A bridge, as the chorus had called it. Between what and what, I still didn't understand. Footsteps echoed faintly above the lab, measured, controlled. They had reached hydroponics. I pulled up orbital scans transmitted by the cleanup cruise ship when it entered system. Those too were archived in our network. Dario had been right. The neural patterns around the excavation site weren't chaotic. They were convergent. Individual brainwave signatures, once distinct, were overlapping into a coherent waveform. Not identical, not erased, aligned. My chest tightened. We had assumed individuality was baseline. What if it was the anomaly? The comm interface flickered. "Sam," Dario whispered. His voice carried the faint rasp of exertion. "I diverted Unit 2 toward the east transit spine. You have maybe 3 minutes." "Where are you?" "Breaking from squad lock now." A harsh tone crackled over the channel. Alert acknowledgement. Zephyr would know. "You just signed your own termination order," I said. "Maybe," Dario replied. "Or maybe I'm signing something else." The lab lights flickered. The harmonic vibrations surged so sharply that I dropped to one knee. My vision fractured into overlapping grids, the lab's straight lines bending into nested angles that shouldn't exist. Through the distortion, I saw something else layered beneath the room. A vast geometric cavity under the colony, not empty, structured, alive in a way that had nothing to do with biology. It was as if Verus 9's crust had been built over the exposed ribcage of something enormous. The vision snapped back. The lab returned to normal proportions, though my pulse still raced. The bridge was reacting. Not to me, to something else. A new signal pierced the comms. Zephyr's voice, amplified and cold. "Ensign Dario, you have broken formation. State your reasoning." Static. Dario did not respond. "Non-compliance registered," Zephyr continued, "reclassifying you as potentially compromised." My heart pounded in my ears. "Dario!" I hissed into the channel. "Get down here, now!" A burst of interference answered. Then Dario's voice again, breathless. "On the way. Sam, he's initiating phase 3. My stomach dropped. "Demolition?" I asked. "Yes. He thinks the sweep destabilized the network. He wants to finish it before it adapts." The bridge. Adapting. Above us, a distant tremor rolled through the structure. Not an explosion, but something heavy repositioning. I pulled up the demolition schematics embedded in the cleanup crew's transmission logs. Target coordinates locked onto the excavation pit. Antimatter microcharges designed to collapse subsurface anomalies inward, vaporizing whatever lay beneath. If they detonated at full yield, they wouldn't just destroy the artifact. They would rupture the underlying lattice. I didn't know what that would do, but the chorus had been certain of one thing. The bridge anchored here. What happens when you tear an anchor loose? The lab door hissed open. I spun, heart hammering. Dario stepped inside, helmet visor lifting with a sharp mechanical click. He looked younger without the reflective shield, younger and far less certain. Sweat traced down his temple despite the suit's climate control. "You look worse than the reports," he said. "Flattered," I replied. He glanced at the holographic projection hovering above the console, the layered scans revealing the immense structure below. "That's not just an object," he murmured. "No," I said. "It's a foundation." Dario stepped closer, studying the data. "Zephyr believes in containment. He thinks if something merges minds, it erases humanity." "And you?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "I think," he said slowly, "that if we're so fragile that alignment destroys us, maybe we were already broken." The lab lights dimmed again, this time not from disruption, from synchronization. The glow along the walls shifted subtly, each fixture pulsing in identical rhythm. The harmonic vibration filled the room like invisible water rising around our ankles. Dario's breath hitched. "It's responding." "It knows," I said. "The demolition charges are arming." As if in confirmation, Zephyr's voice cut through every speaker in the lab. "Phase 3, engaged. All personnel clear the blast radius." Dario's eyes snapped to mine. "How long?" 2 minutes, he said. The projection flickered, overlaying a countdown beside the excavation coordinates. The bridge beneath us shifted again, not violently, but deliberately. I felt it in my spine, a pressure building downward, not upward. "It's not fighting," I realized aloud. Dario frowned. "What?" "It's consolidating," I said. "If he detonates those charges, the shockwave might propagate through the lattice. Not just here, through every anchor point. Other colonies?" Dario asked, horrified. "We don't know how many worlds this thing touches," I said. "We may have built our expansion along a pre-existing network." The idea hung between us, enormous and terrible. Zephyr's voice returned, closer now, not over speakers, in the hallway outside. "Dr. Voss," he called. "Step away from the console." Heavy boots approached the lab door. Dario's hand moved to the sidearm clipped at his hip, a compact neural cutter, not meant for firefights, but precise enough to sever brain activity with surgical finality. "You're asking me to choose," he said quietly. "I already did," I replied. The door mechanism cycled. Through the narrow gap as it began to open, I saw the pale curve of Zephyr's helmet, the matte white of his suit unmarred by doubt. Behind him, 2 more units raised emitter rifles. The countdown hovered in the air above the console. 90 seconds. The harmonic vibration surged, again, and for the first time, I felt something in it that wasn't neutral. Not hunger, not malice, expectation. As if the bridge were waiting to see what humanity would do when faced with the choice between isolation and convergence. Dario's fingers tightened around his weapon. Zephyr stepped into the doorway. "Stand down," the commander said, and beneath the floor, something vast shifted its attention upward. Zephyr didn't rush. He didn't have to. His presence alone changed the room's temperature, not physically, but socially. Like a new law had been enacted the moment his boots crossed the threshold. 2 cleanup units behind him angled their emitter rifles with synchronized precision, barrel rings glowing faintly as they charged. Dario stood half a step in front of me without thinking, a small movement, instinctive. Zephyr noticed. "Ensign," he said, voice calm through the suit's external speaker. "Move aside." Dario didn't. I saw his throat bob as he swallowed. His visor was up. His eyes were naked to the world and therefore human, and therefore vulnerable. "Sir," Dario said, The demolition will propagate through the subsurface lattice. We don't know the extent of the network. We know enough, Zephyr replied. It must be severed. It's not attacking, Dario insisted. It's stabilizing. Zephyr's helmet turned toward him, by a few degrees, like a machine aligning with a target. Stabilization is assimilation, Zephyr said. That is attack by another name. My mouth tasted of ash. The harmonic vibration made the air in the lab feel thicker, as if the bridge's attention pressed against the ceiling. Commander, I said, stepping to the side of Dario. You can't sterilize what you refuse to understand. If this structure connects multiple worlds and you detonate, you are not here to advise, Zephyr interrupted. You are here to be contained. Contained again, like a specimen, like guilt in a jar. A soft tone chimed from Zephyr's wrist display. He looked down, then up. 1 minute to detonation, he said. Dario's eyes widened. Sir, abort. Just delay until we have full mapping. Zephyr raised one gloved hand. The 2 units behind him adjusted their rifles a fraction. The emitter coils brightened. Ensign Dario, Zephyr said, you are relieved. Of duty pending cognitive evaluation. Dario's jaw tightened. You're going to kill him, he said, nodding toward me. And then you're going to kill everyone else who survived the sweep. Zephyr did not deny it. Loss was incurred when autonomy failed, he said. We prevent spread. That is all. The hum in my bones sharpened, and the lab's edges began to do that thing again. Lines repeating, angles doubling. The projection above the console jittered, the countdown numbers briefly displaying wrong digits, then snapping back. 55 seconds. I felt eyes on me. Not Zephyr's, not Dario's, the bridge's. A sensation like standing beneath a massive dark window, aware that something on the other side was watching. Not with hatred, but with a patient curiosity that made hatred seem small. And then something impossible happened. A voice spoke inside my skull, not through air, not through speakers. Not one voice, many, layered, familiar. Sam. My breath caught. My hands shook. Dario stiffened. His eyes darted, searching for the sound source. Zephyr didn't react at all, which meant he had heard it before. Sam, the chorus repeated inside my head, and with it came an image, not a hallucination, not a dream, but a memory that wasn't mine. A corridor on Verus 9 from weeks ago, people laughing, someone waving a hand, the smell of warm bread from hydroponics. Then the same corridor, empty, lights flickering. Then the same corridor, filled with colonists standing shoulder to shoulder, faces calm. A sequence, a pattern. The bridge wasn't speaking in language at first. It was speaking in alignment. Dario whispered, "What is that?" Zephyr answered him like he was giving a lesson. "Cognitive echo. You are being pulled toward the contamination." Dario's voice trembled. "It's showing me things." "It is bait," Zephyr said. 38 seconds. The colonists above ground, those still, synchronized, must have felt the countdown too. I sensed movement in the colony through the vibration, like many feet shifting in unison far away. Dario looked at me. "Sam, you've been close to it longer. What is it?" I stared at the holographic scan hovering above the console, the lattice under Verus 9 like a buried cathedral. My mind tried to label it, to domesticate it with terminology. Receiver, network, bridge. But the sensation inside my skull didn't feel like technology. It felt like a choice. "It's not a mind," I said slowly. "It's a condition, a state where minds stop being solitary." Zephyr stepped forward one pace. "Enough," he said. "Dr. Voss, you will surrender and submit to termination. Ensign Dario, move aside, or be considered contaminated." Dario's hand lifted the neural cutter. His finger hovered near the trigger. I didn't want this. I didn't want to turn my last ally into a corpse. But the countdown kept falling. 27 seconds. I snapped my gaze back to the console. There was one option Zephyr hadn't accounted for. We couldn't stop his ship's charges, but we might redirect the blast. The bridge was anchored below. If we could trigger a localized collapse around the artifact node, collapse inward rather than outward, we could neutralize the exposed point without rupturing the wider lattice. It was insane. It was also the only path I could see. My fingers flew over the console. I pulled up the excavation containment controls, the old seismic dampers we'd installed to stabilize the dig site. They were designed to absorb tremors from drilling, not antimatter detonations. But if I inverted the phase, Dario saw what I was doing. "Sam, what are you—" "Buying a smaller death," I said. Zephyr's rifle units stepped in unison. "Stop," Zephyr commanded. 15 seconds. The harmonic vibrations surged. The lab lights pulsed in sync, brighter, brighter, then dim, like a heartbeat accelerating. And through it, the chorus in my skull sharpened into words. Anchor. The word carried weight, meaning stacked on meaning, a warning and an invitation at once. I slammed the final command. Seismic dampers shifted into inversion mode. The lab floor shivered. The air pressure changed. My ears popped. Zephyr lunged forward for the first time, sudden and violent. His gloved hand grabbed for my shoulder. Dario moved. He didn't fire the cutter. He shoved Zephyr back with both hands, hard, and the commander stumbled a step. "Dario!" Zephyr barked. 5 seconds. The console screamed an overload warning. I felt the bridge beneath us tighten, as if drawing itself inward. 3, 2, 1. The explosion did not come from above. It came from below. A force like a giant breath exhaled upward through the colony, and the world turned into white pressure. The lab's walls buckled outward for a fraction of a second, then snapped back, as if reality itself had flexed and decided to stay whole. I was thrown off my feet. My shoulder slammed into a console bank. Pain flashed hot and immediate. When my vision cleared, the holographic projection above the console was gone. Power flickered, then stabilized in a dim emergency mode. The countdown had vanished. Zephyr lay on one knee near the doorway, one hand braced against the floor. His helmet was cracked along one side. Dario was breathing hard, staring at the floor as if expecting it to split open. Above us, somewhere in the colony, a deep rumble rolled through the ground, long and low, like stone rearranging itself. I tasted blood. And beneath that, beneath everything, the harmonic vibration had changed. It wasn't closer. It was satisfied. Zephyr rose slowly. His voice came out rougher now, anger finally bleeding into it. "What did you do?" he demanded. I pushed myself up, wincing. "I saved your mission," I said. "Just not the way you wanted." Zephyr's cracked visor turned toward Dario. "And you," he said, each word precise. "You chose contamination." Dario's jaw clenched. "I chose people." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Zephyr's wrist display chimed again. He glanced down. His posture stiffened. "We have a new classification," he said. "The anomaly has shifted." He looked at me. "Doctor," he said coldly, "you just made it worse." And in the trembling silence that followed, I realized the bridge's attention wasn't on Zephyr anymore. It was on us, on the two minds that had defied doctrine together. The colony above us began to sing, not in sound, not in any way a microphone would catch. It was a coordinated pressure that moved through the structure like a tide. Biolab 3's metal ribs vibrated in sympathy. Loose instruments on benches trembled and settled into new positions, as if the room had developed preferences. The seismic inversion had done what I'd hoped and what I'd feared. It prevented a clean detonation. It also woke the bridge fully. Zephyr stood rigid in the doorway, helmet cracked, suit lights flickering as his systems recalibrated. Behind him, the two rifle units had recovered and were re-aiming, but their movements were fractionally delayed now, like their timing had been nudged out of phase. Only a fraction. Enough to notice. Enough to matter. Dario glanced at the hallway, then back at me. His pupils were slightly dilated. His voice came low, like he didn't want the air to overhear. "Sam," he said, "I can feel them." "The synchronized," I murmured. He shook his head once. "No, I mean, everything." As he spoke, I felt it too. Not thoughts, not words, but a sense of proximity that did not obey distance. Somewhere above ground, dozens of minds were clustered near the excavation pit like a single dense cloud. Somewhere farther, scattered survivors sat stunned in hallways, their identities loose and fraying after Zephyr's sweep. And beneath all of it, under the crust, something vast maintained a coherent field that made these minds feel like floating objects held by gravity. Zephyr's voice cut across the room. "Do not indulge the contamination," he said sharply, as if he could hear what we were feeling. "It will mimic intimacy. It will mimic meaning. It will restructure your priorities until you mistake surrender for salvation." Dario didn't look away from me. "Why does he sound like he's reciting a manual?" "Because he is," I said. "He's trained for this, not outbreaks." "Contact." The word contact sat between us like a lit fuse. Zephyr stepped forward. "Dr. Voss, Ensign Dario, you will come with us to the plaza. We will complete sterilization with secondary charges." I blinked hard. "Secondary? You neutralized the primary detonation," Zephyr said. "You did not remove the anomaly. We now apply a wider solution." Wider meant atmosphere. Wider meant burning the colony from above. "You'll kill everyone still breathing," I said. Zephyr's head angled. "Correct." Dario's hands trembled, still gripping the neural cutter. "And what about Earth?" he demanded. "What do you tell them? That we did our duty and came home clean?" "We tell them nothing," Zephyr replied. "This operation is sealed. Varus 9 will be catalogued as structural failure during quarantine. Expansion resumes elsewhere." My stomach turned. "You're not preventing spread," I said. "You're preventing knowledge." Zephyr's cracked visor reflected a warped version of my face. "Knowledge is a vector," he said. "Some truths are contagious." The hum beneath my bones surged, and the room's geometry did that subtle folding again. For a moment, the doorway behind Zephyr looked deeper than it should have been, like a tunnel stretching into impossible distance. I blinked and it snapped back. Then the chorus returned inside my skull, not as layered chatter, as a single unified pressure that shaped meaning. "You cut the node. You did not cut the bridge." Images followed. The excavation pit glowing faintly under moonlight, colonists standing in a ring, Zephyr's ship shadow sliding over them like a blade. Then another image, alien and incomprehensible. A lattice of points across dark space, each point an anchor, each anchor a place where minds gathered near a buried shape. Not dozens of worlds, hundreds. Dario gasped, stumbling back a step. "Sam, are you seeing that?" "Yes," I whispered. Zephyr's posture stiffened. "Stop," he commanded. "Do not receive it." He raised his wrist. A sharp chirp sounded as he transmitted an override. The rifle unit's emitters brightened. Neural cutter beams, wide spectrum, designed to interrupt patterned cognition. Dario lifted his weapon, conflicted. "Sir." Zephyr's voice hardened. "Fire." The two rifle units fired first. The beams weren't visible, only a sudden distortion in the air, like heat haze. The effect hit my skull with brutal force. My thoughts fractured. I tasted copper. My knees buckled. Dario staggered too, teeth clenched, but he didn't fall. He had been closer to the bridge longer now. More aligned, more resilient. Zephyr stepped through the distortion, approaching us like a man walking through smoke. "You are compromised," he said to Dario. "Surrender your weapon." Dario's eyes were wet. Not tears exactly, pressure behind them. You don't even hear it. Do you? Dario whispered. Zephyr paused. Hear what? Dario swallowed hard. Us. His voice cracked on the last word. And then he did something that made my breath stop. He switched the neural cutter's mode. Not lethal, broadcast. A training function meant to sync squad comms through suit interfaces, to share maps, vital signs, orientation. He pointed it at Zephyr and triggered it. The cutter didn't fire a beam, it pulsed. For an instant, Zephyr's suit lights flared as the broadcast tried to connect. Zephyr's helmet snapped back as if struck. His gloved hand went to the side of his head. What did you... he rasped. Dario's face was a mask of pain. I just let you feel it. For 1 second. Zephyr straightened, breathing heavier now. The room changed, not because Zephyr did, because the bridge noticed what Dario had done. The harmonic vibrations swelled, and the lab lights pulsed brighter in synchronized rhythm. The air thickened with that sense of being observed. Zephyr's voice turned strained. It's in my head. Dario nodded once, grim. Now you understand why you're afraid. Zephyr raised his wrist display again, fingers shaking. All units, he barked into his comm. Advance Phase 4. Atmospheric sterilization, immediate. Phase 4. I hadn't seen that in any protocol. Dario's eyes widened. Phase 4 isn't... It is now, Zephyr snapped. My mind fought through the residual disruption. We have to get to the excavation site, I said, forcing clarity. If the bridge anchors there, if the node is exposed, we can destroy it, Dario finished, voice low. He said it like he hated himself for agreeing, but his eyes held mine. If Zephyr sterilized the atmosphere, there would be nothing left to save anyway. Only ash and sealed reports. We need access to the pit, I said. Now. Zephyr's rifle units moved toward us again, their steps jittery, out of sync, as if the bridge was tugging gently at their timing. Dario grabbed my arm. Service tunnel network, he said. There's a maintenance lift that surfaces near the excavation ridge. If we move now... A loud crack echoed above. Not an explosion, a structural failure. The lab ceiling vibrated. Dust sifted down from seams. Somewhere in the colony, something heavy had fallen, or something had risen. The chorus returned, not as words, but as a sensation of urgency. Cutters come. Anchor must decide. Dario pulled me toward the back exit. Move, he said. As we ran into the sub-level corridor, Zephyr's voice followed, raw with anger and something else now, something like fear struggling against indoctrination. You cannot save them, he shouted. You can only spread it. Behind us, the rifle units gave chase. Ahead, the corridor lights pulsed in synchronized rhythm, guiding us like runway markers toward the excavation ridge. And beneath, our feet, the bridge tightened its grip on the colony's mines, not to trap us, but to pull us toward the place where the buried shape could be reached. The maintenance lift smelled like lubricant and old dust, the kind that collects in places no one visits unless something has already gone wrong. Dario slapped the manual override and the cage shuddered upward, cables whining. The emergency strips along the shaft walls pulsed in that synchronized rhythm again, a steady beat that felt less like guidance now and more like a countdown written into the colony itself. I held the railing with both hands, trying to keep my balance as the lift rose. My shoulder ached where I'd slammed into the console back in the lab. Every time the cage jolted, pain ran down my arm like a wire carrying current. Above us, the colony groaned. Not the sharp sound of failing metal. A long, low strain, like Verus 9's skin was being pulled. You feel that? Dario asked, eyes fixed upward. I feel everything, I muttered. He didn't smile. His expression stayed tight, focused, like he was afraid that if he allowed himself to react emotionally, the bridge would seize that opening and pour itself in. The lift hatch opened with a scrape of metal. Cold air rushed in. We stepped out onto the excavation ridge. The world above had changed. Not the sky, not the star, the colony, the plaza lights, normally scattered like islands across the settlement, were now pulsing in coordinated waves. Hab domes blinked in sequence. Transit spines lit and dimmed as if someone was sending a message through the infrastructure. The synchronized weren't hiding anymore. They stood in open streets, hundreds of them, clustered in rings and lines that curved toward the excavation pit, like rivers feeding an ocean. They were quiet, calm. Their faces turned inward, as if listening to something beneath the soil. And at the center, the pit itself glowed faintly, not with light exactly, with wrongness, an absence of shadow where shadow should have been. Zephyr's ship hovered above the plaza now, not on the ground. Anti-grav thrusters kept it, suspended a few meters off the surface, belly ports opening like gills. Atmospheric sterilization ports. Dario stared up at it, throat working. He's already deploying. A thin mist began to pour from the ports, drifting down in a widening cone. It looked like fog. It moved like fog. But it didn't behave like fog. It fell too evenly. It settled with intent. "Is that—" I started. "Reactive sterilant," Dario said, voice flat. "It eats organic matter at the molecular level. Leaves structures intact. Like it never happened." My stomach twisted. "It'll kill them all. It'll kill us too," he said. We had minutes. Maybe less. A movement near the pit drew my attention. A gap in the ring of synchronized opened, and someone stepped forward. Not one of the chorus speakers. Someone alone. A woman. Her hair was matted, her face pale, eyes wide and human in a way that made my chest tighten. She stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the pit. Survivor. Not synchronized. Not calm. She looked like she'd been running for days. When she saw me, she tried to speak, but her throat only produced a dry rasp. I moved toward her instinctively. Dario caught my arm. "Sam, no. She's alive," I said. "And the sterilant is coming," he snapped. "We can't—" The woman's lips moved again. This time sound came out. "Doctor," she whispered. "It's calling." I froze. "How do you know who I am?" I asked. Her eyes flickered to Dario, then to the pulsing lights, then back to me. "Everyone knows," she said. "It's in the walls, in the air." The hum surged. My teeth ached. Behind her, the pit's inner walls shimmered with that impossible geometry. Symbols etched into the exposed node. Lines that weren't carvings so much as absences in matter, pulsed faintly in sync with the colony lights. Dario's voice went low. "Sam, that's not just a pit anymore." He was right. The excavation had widened, not by digging, by opening. The edge of the pit had deformed, curving inward like a throat. The stone around it looked softened, as if reality had decided it could be folded rather than broken. The woman reached toward the symbols with trembling fingers. "No," I said sharply, stepping between her and the node. Her hand stopped in midair, her pupils dilated. Then the chorus spoke through her mouth. Not layered, not gentle, urgent. "Sterilant falls. Anchor must be sealed or severed." I recoiled. "Stop using them," I hissed. The woman's face contorted, tears spilling from her eyes, and her voice returned, hers, broken. "I didn't want it," she sobbed. It just borrows me." Dario looked sick. "That's assimilation." "It's communication," I said, though the words sounded thin even to me. Above, the mist thickened. It drifted closer, the leading edge licking at the outskirts of the colony like pale fire. Some of the synchronized shifted, turning their faces upward, not in fear, in observation, like they were watching weather. Zephyr's voice boomed from the hovering ship's external speakers, magnified across the ridge. "All contaminated persons remain stationary," he declared. "Sterilization will complete in 12 minutes. 12 minutes. I didn't believe him. He'd already shortened timelines once. He would do it again. Dario's hands clenched into fists. We have to act. I stared at the node. The artifact wasn't a box or a pillar like the early images from my own memory. It was a surface that refused to resolve into a stable shape. When I focused on it, my vision slid off, catching only fragments. A curve, a corner, a depth too deep. It wasn't in the pit. The pit was in it. Sam, Dario said, tight. You said we could collapse it inward. We could try, I replied. But not with colony systems alone. Not now. We'd need a direct charge at the node. Dario's gaze flicked to his suit pack. We carry micro-demolition for sealed decon. Small yield. It might be enough, I said. Then the horror of the next thought hit me. Or it might rupture the bridge completely. The woman, half sobbing, half listening, looked at me with eyes that were suddenly too calm. The bridge does not want to travel, she said, voice again threaded with chorus. It wants to anchor. It wants minds near it. Warm. Close. Dario swallowed. Then why is it showing us the network? The woman's mouth smiled without her consent. Because cutters burn anchors. The bridge learns. It will change where it can be found. My blood went cold. It can move, I whispered. Not physically, conceptually. Shift its point of influence. If we destroyed this node, it might simply realign to another anchor point, another colony, another world. Or worse, attached to a ship, to a crew, to the idea of proximity itself. The mist rolled closer. The air took on that dry electrical taste again. Dario looked at me. What's the plan, Sam? Because if we do nothing, Zephyr wipes everything. And if we destroy it wrong, we might hand Earth exactly what it fears. I stared into the pit. The cymbals pulsed. The hum deepened. And in the humming silence, I realized the bridge had been waiting for this exact dilemma. Not to harm us. To see what we chose to protect. Autonomy. Or each other. Above, the sterilant mist reached the outer ring of synchronized. It touched bare skin. And the colonists did not scream. They simply stepped closer together, as if proximity could defy chemistry. Dario's voice broke. They're going to die standing. I felt something tear in me. A scientist's detachment. A man's denial. All right, I said. We go down. Dario stared. Into the pit. Into the node, I corrected. If there's a way to seal the bridge without rupturing it, it's not going to be on the surface. The woman grabbed my sleeve with trembling fingers. It's cold inside, she whispered. It shows you things you can't carry back. Dario checked the charge pack, then met my eyes. Then we don't carry them, he said. We just finish it. Behind us, footsteps crunched on gravel. Heavy, measured. Zephyr and his remaining units emerged onto the ridge, rifles raised, suit lights cutting through the mist. End of discussion, Zephyr called. Step away from the anomaly. Dario's jaw tightened. The sterilant fog drifted between us and the pit like a veil. And the node pulsed, inviting, indifferent, ancient. I took one step toward it anyway. Zephyr fired a warning shot that wasn't a shot. The air between us bent, a rippling distortion that hit the gravel at my feet and turned it briefly into fine powder, like the ground had forgotten how to be solid. The emitter rifles were not designed to kill quickly. They were designed to interrupt, to make a mind fall apart, before the body did. Last chance, Zephyr said, voice amplified through the mist. Step away. You are not authorized to approach. Dario stood beside me, charge pack clipped to his suit harness. His hand hovered near the latch, fingers flexing like he could will courage into them. The woman behind me, still half herself, half chorus, whimpered. The sterilant fog touched the edge of her sleeve, and the fabric browned instantly, curling like paper near flame. She jerked back, eyes wide. The synchronized at the outer ring did not jerk back. They pressed closer. The fog crawled along their skin, and their hairline darkened, but they only tightened. Around the rings thickened. A field of around the rings thickened, a field of coherence. The fog didn't stop, but it slowed, dispersing unevenly when it crossed the densest clusters. Reality itself resisted the sterilant, not as a shield, but as a stubborn insistence on shared pattern. Dario's voice came tight. "Sam, we're out of time." Zephyr advanced one step. His units mirrored him. "You're making this worse," he said, and there was strain under the certainty now, like the brief taste of the bridge in his head had left a splinter. I looked at Dario. No speeches, no hero lines, just a decision. He nodded once. I turned back to Zephyr. "You want me contained?" I shouted through the fog. "Fine, contain this." And I ran. Not straight toward the pit, at an angle, using the ridge's broken machinery as cover. Dario ran with me, boots skidding on gravel. The woman cried out, but I didn't look back. If I looked back, I would stop. Behind us, Zephyr barked, "Stop them!" The rifles hissed. Distortions snapped through the air, one striking the excavator's arm behind me. The metal folded like wax. Another wave hit my side, grazing my ribs with a sensation like cold hands squeezing the inside of my lungs. I nearly collapsed. Dario grabbed my shoulder and hauled me forward. "Don't let it hit your head!" he yelled, as if I had a choice. The pit edge rose in front of us, like the lip of a wound. Up close, it was worse. The geometry didn't just shimmer, it argued with my eyes. I saw a slope, then a vertical drop, then a corridor turning sideways into darkness. My brain tried to build a map and failed. The bridge wasn't hiding, it was untranslatable. The chorus surged in my skull again, urgent and clear. Down, before cutters seal the mouth. I stumbled to the edge and looked in. The pit did not descend. It opened, like an iris. A passage unfolded where stone should have been, not carved but rearranged. A narrow ramp formed itself out of folded angles, descending into a depth that made my stomach twist. Dario stared, breath ragged. That wasn't there. "It's making a way," I said. "For us?" he asked. I didn't answer. We dropped into the opening. The moment my boots touched the ramp, the air changed, thin, dry, cold enough to sting. The colony noise above vanished. Even the fog hiss became distant, like we had stepped behind glass. Dario followed, and the ramp flexed under our weight, not like rubber, but like a living compromise between matter and intention. Above us, Zephyr shouted again, muffled now. I caught fragments. "Seal! Charges!" Then a brighter pulse of light washed down the passage, and the opening behind us began to close. Not with rock, with angles. Walls folding inward, not collapsing, but choosing a new configuration. Dario cursed and sprinted deeper. I ran after him, my shoulder pain flaring with every step. The ramp tightened into a corridor. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something else, like rain on hot stone, except there was no rain here and no hot stone. The corridor widened abruptly into a chamber. I stopped so hard I nearly fell. It was not a room. It was a shape pretending to be a room. The floor wasn't flat. It was a plane, but not one my mind could hold. My eyes slid off it the way they slid off the node above. The walls were made of material that looked like black glass until I blinked, and then it looked like pale bone, and then it looked like nothing at all. In the center stood a structure, an obelisk at first glance, but wrong. It had no stable outline. Symbols crawled across it like slow-moving fractures. The heart of the node, the bridge's mouth. Dario's breathing sounded loud in the strange silence. "This is under the colony." "Under the colony," I agreed. "Or under our understanding of it." He unclipped the microcharge from his harness and held it up like a small sun in his gloved hand. "One shot," he said. "We plant it and run. Maybe it collapses inward. Maybe it tears open a hole to wherever this goes." My mouth went dry. "You're really going to do it?" Dario's eyes flicked toward the symbols. The hum here wasn't in my bones anymore. It was in my thoughts, like a second heartbeat behind the first. I was trained to erase, he said quietly, but not like this, not with people in the fog above, dying because a commander can't tolerate evolution. He stepped toward the obelisk, and the chamber responded. The symbols brightened, the air pressure shifted, the walls rippled, and suddenly the chamber was full of impressions, not ghosts, not visions. Presences arranged like reflections in broken mirrors. Faces I recognized from Varus 9, engineers, medics, children from the school dome, appearing and fading along the walls. Not as images, but as the sensation of them being near. Their closeness crowded my chest. Dario froze, charge still in hand. "Sam," he whispered, voice cracking. "They're here." I shook my head, unable to breathe properly. "No, they're recorded." The chorus did not speak with words this time. It offered memory, a flood. The first excavation day, laughter, banners, the smell of dust and coffee. Then the first dream reports. Then the first violent separation, panic flaring like a match. Then bodies clustered together, calming. Then hunger, then silence, then alignment. It wasn't showing us to torment us. It was showing us to prove something. That what we called infection was the colony learning a new shape of being. Dario's hands shook. "If we destroy this, we destroy them," he said. "We might," I admitted. He looked at me with raw desperation. "And if we don't, Zephyr sterilizes the surface and they die anyway." The moral trap snapped shut. Then, from somewhere behind the chamber, a new soundless pressure entered. A presence with sharp edges. Not the bridge. Human. The corridor behind us folded again, and Zephyr stepped into the chamber, suit lights bright and cutting. His units followed, rifles raised. The opening behind them remained open, held by the node like a mouth that had decided to let the blade inside. Zephyr's visor tracked us. "You think hiding underground changes the classification," he said. "It doesn't. You've brought yourselves to the source. Convenient." Dario lifted the microcharge higher. "Don't come closer," he warned. Zephyr stopped at the chamber threshold. His cracked helmet made his silhouette look wounded, but his voice stayed steady. "You cannot negotiate with a cognitive hazard," he said. "You can only end it." Behind him, the chamber walls shimmered with the recorded presences of colonists, their nearness pressing against my ribs like a crowd in the dark. Zephyr's head tilted, as if listening. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The bridge brushed his mind again, just lightly, and I saw it in his posture, the brief micro-flinch of a man feeling something he can't file into doctrine. Dario took one step toward the obelisk anyway, and Zephyr raised his rifle. Zephyr's rifle didn't fire immediately. His finger hovered on the trigger like he was waiting for the bridge to give him a reason that his training could approve. Dario stood between the rifle and the obelisk, the microcharge held close to his chest, as if proximity to his own heart made it more real. I felt the chamber tightening around us, not physically, socially, cognitively. The bridge had brought the cutters inside its mouth. It was watching what we did with them. "Ensign Dario," Zephyr said, and there was something almost gentle beneath the command tone now, like a man trying once to salvage a subordinate before protocol made it impossible. "You have been exposed. I understand the disorientation. Step away and you can still be evaluated, treated." Dario's laugh came out brittle. "Treated," he echoed. "You mean wiped?" Zephyr's visor angled toward the obelisk. The symbols crawled along it like slow lightning trapped under glass. "You think this is life," Zephyr said. "It is not. It is an algorithm using human brains as substrate." Dario's jaw clenched. "And what are orders then?" He shot back. "What is doctrine? A different algorithm?" The words hung sharp in the cold air. Zephyr didn't answer. Instead, he shifted his stance, rifle steadying. "You have 60 seconds before the surface is sterilized," he said. The ship will not abort. My team will not be extracted until the anomaly is neutralized. My stomach dropped. You're staying down here? We are already lost, Zephyr replied, flat. If contamination spreads beyond Verus 9, humanity is lost. He said it like a prayer. The bridge pressed against my thoughts, offering sensation instead of speech. A dense warmth of minds together, the opposite of the cold isolation that had ruled our colonies for generations. It felt comforting for half a heartbeat. Then it felt terrifying. Because comfort that you didn't choose is still violation. Dario looked at me, eyes shining with panic and resolve. Sam, tell me the truth. Is there any chance the inward collapse works? I forced myself to focus through the hum. I stared at the obelisk, at the chamber seams, at the way geometry around it refused stability. The dampers I inverted, I said, voice low, might have created a local phase pocket. If we place the charge at the base, it could collapse the node inward, seal the mouth without tearing the lattice. Could, Dario repeated. Yes, I admitted. Could also rupture it, or open it. Zephyr's rifle rose a fraction higher. Then we will not allow you to experiment, he said. One of Zephyr's units stepped forward, emitter rifle aimed at Dario's head. Another angled toward me. Zephyr didn't want a firefight. He wanted a clean termination. Dario inhaled shakily. If you shoot me, he said, I drop the charge. It might detonate on impact. Zephyr paused. That is why, Zephyr said quietly, you will not be shot. He made a hand signal. The unit on the left holstered the rifle and raised a device shaped like a wide ring, an emitter collar, non-lethal neural clamp, to drop Dario without detonating the charge. My mind raced, frantic. If Dario fell, if Zephyr took the charge, he would plant it exactly where he wanted. Maximum annihilation, no careful collapse, no chance of sealing. We needed a second of chaos. The bridge offered it, not by throwing rocks or moving walls, but by doing what it always did, aligning perception. For the briefest moment, I felt Dario's fear not as something I observed, but as something that pulsed inside my own chest. I felt the steadiness he was forcing into his limbs. I felt the weight of his choice like it was hanging from my ribs. And in return, unasked, I felt my own guilt pour into him, my signature on the excavation order, my voice dismissing early warnings, my rationalizations. Dario flinched, eyes widening as if he'd been punched. Sam, he whispered. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it so sharply it hurt. The chamber brightened, not with light, with nearness. The recorded presences along the walls sharpened into a crowding sensation. The air thickened. Zephyr's units shifted their footing, momentarily disoriented. Zephyr's helmet snapped toward the obelisk. It's increasing synchronization, he barked. Do not. Too late. For a split second, Zephyr's eyes, behind that cracked visor, stared through the chamber as if he was seeing something layered on top of reality. I knew what he saw because the bridge let me feel the outline of it. Not a monster, not a god. A pattern vast enough to include human minds the way an ocean includes droplets. Zephyr's posture stiffened, his rifle wavering by a fraction. That fraction was everything. Dario moved. He didn't attack Zephyr. He lunged toward the obelisk and slapped the microcharge to its base with trembling hands. The adhesive pad hissed as it bonded to the shifting surface, struggling to find purchase on something that refused to be stable. Zephyr recovered instantly. No! He roared and fired. The emitter distortion struck Dario in the shoulder, snapping his body sideways. He hit the chamber floor hard, but the charge stayed attached, blinking a small red indicator. Armed, Dario groaned, trying to push himself up, one arm limp. I sprinted toward him. Zephyr advanced, rifle pointed now at the charge itself, as if he could shoot it into compliance. Disarm it, Zephyr ordered me. I don't have the code, I spat. You placed it, Zephyr snapped at Dario. You can cancel it. Dario coughed, face pale. No, he rasped. I set it to dead man. Zephyr froze, The bridge's hum rose, filling the chamber like rising water. The obelisk's symbols flared in response, crawling faster, turned raw. You don't understand what turned raw. You don't understand what you're doing. Dario's eyes found mine. He managed a faint, pained smile. That makes two of us. Outside the chamber, above it, far away, I felt the sterilant system continue, indifferent. The countdown Zephyr had mentioned still mattered. We had less than a minute. Sam, Dario whispered, if the collapse starts, you have to run. I'm not leaving you, I said. Dario's gaze sharpened. You have to. He swallowed, then forced the words out, each one dragging against pain. Someone has to remember what they erased. Zephyr stepped forward again, rifle raised toward Dario's head now. If you will not be treated, Zephyr said, you will be silenced. The chamber pulsed, the obelisk flared, and the charge's red light blinked faster. 10 seconds. 9. Dario stared past Zephyr, past me, into the shifting black surface of the node. His voice softened, almost reverent. I can hear them, he whispered. All of them. Together. 8. 7. Zephyr's rifle steadied. 6. I grabbed Dario under the arm, trying to haul him up. He hissed in pain, but forced his legs under him. 5. The bridge pressed into my thoughts, offering a path, an exit corridor folding open to the right, a route that hadn't existed before. It wasn't helping us out of kindness. It was ensuring the story continued. 4. 3. Dario shoved me toward the opening with his good hand. Go, he said. 2. Zephyr fired. The distortion hit Dario square in the chest. He staggered backward, not falling, not yet, as if held upright by the nearness of the chamber. 1. The microcharge detonated without sound. The world didn't explode outward, it collapsed inward. The obelisk imploded like a star dying, lightless pressure, sucking everything toward its center. The chamber walls flexed and folded, angles snapping into new configurations with violent elegance. The air tore at my lungs. Dario's body was pulled toward the collapsing node, arms flung wide as if embracing it. Zephyr screamed, an actual human sound, his suit dragged forward, boots scraping futilely. I stumbled into the corridor the bridge had opened, my fingers clawing at the wall as gravity changed direction. The last thing I saw before the chamber folded shut was Dario's face, eyes wide and clear, lips moving without sound. Not goodbye, a warning. Then the corridor sealed behind me like a throat closing, and the bridge went quiet. Not dead. Quiet in the way a predator becomes quiet when it has finished feeding. I don't remember the next 30 seconds as a sequence. I remember them as sensations layered on top of each other, as if my brain tried to store the event in parallel instead of in order. Cold air ripping at my eyes, the wall under my palms turning slick, then rough, then slick again, as the corridor's material couldn't decide what it was. My shoulder screaming, my own breath sounding too loud in a space that hated sound, and underneath it all, an absence where the hum had been. The bridge didn't vanish, it withdrew, like a tide pulling back from shore, leaving the sand stunned and wet. The corridor sloped upward, though up felt negotiable now. I ran anyway, half falling, half guided by the corridor's subtle folds. Lights pulsed faintly along the seams, not in a welcoming rhythm anymore, but in a weak, irregular stutter, as if the colony's infrastructure was trying to speak and had forgotten its language. Ahead, metal appeared. Ordinary metal. A hatch, a maintenance exit back into human geometry. I threw myself at it and slammed the manual lever down. The hatch opened. Fog poured in, sterilant. It didn't drift gently anymore. It rolled like a living blanket across the ground, thicker, denser, eating the edges of everything it touched. The air tasted like dry lightning and rot. I coughed instantly. My eyes watered. My skin prickled as if tiny needles were testing for a place to begin. I stumbled out onto the excavation ridge again. The colony was dying, not with flames, with quiet erasure, where the fog had settled, plants browned to ash. Cloth curled and disappeared. Skin darkened, then broke down, not into gore, but into brittle flakes that lifted in the air like burned paper. The synchronized rings were still there, but they were smaller now. Not because they'd scattered, because the outer layers had been eaten away. The ones who remained stood pressed together so tightly that their shoulders and faces touched. Their mouths were open, but no screams came out. Not because they felt no pain, because pain had no place to land in a mind that was shared. For a brief, unbearable moment, I felt them again, the nearness pressing against my thoughts like a crowd in a corridor. It wasn't a voice, it wasn't language, it was a final collective insistence, together. Then it faltered, and I was alone again. The excavation pit, what had been a pit, was no longer open. The ground had sealed, not smoothly. It looked like the soil had been folded shut by hands that didn't understand soil. The edges didn't line up. Angles overlapped. The symbol patterns were gone, replaced by a dull scar that refused to cast a consistent shadow. The node had collapsed inward. Dario had done what I couldn't. Zephyr. I didn't see him. If he'd been pulled into the collapse, he might be dead, or trapped, or worse, merged into the bridge's quiet, preserved as a lesson. The hovering ship still hung above the plaza, fog still pouring from its belly ports, indifferent to what had happened below. Either Zephyr hadn't been able to transmit an abort, or the ship didn't require his will at all. A cleanup cruise ship designed for extermination wouldn't pause because its commander stopped breathing. It would simply complete the procedure. I staggered away from the sealed scar, head down, trying to keep my mouth covered as the fog licked at the ridge. My suitless lungs burned. I ripped a torn polymer filter mask from a discarded equipment crate and pressed it over my face. It was soaked with old dust and smelled like oil. It was still better than nothing. Somewhere across the ridge, a figure moved. Human, stumbling. I squinted through the mist. The woman, survivor, chorus borrowed, crawled toward the edge of a collapsed trench, one arm dragging uselessly. Her sleeve was half gone. Her skin beneath was darkened, blistering in slow, unnatural quiet. She looked up at me, eyes wide with animal terror now, no chorus inside them. "Doctor," she rasped. "Help." I moved toward her before I thought, and then the fog thickened between us. A wall of pale erasure. She coughed once, twice. Her body shuddered, her eyes fixed on mine, pleading. Then her lips tried to form another word, and her lower face began to crumble, not like melting, but like structure losing permission to remain. I stopped. Not because I wanted to, because I understood in that moment that I couldn't outrun this with compassion. I couldn't fix it with my hands. I could only carry a piece of truth out of a place designed to leave nothing. "I'm sorry," I whispered through the mask. The fog took her, quietly. The colony lights, once pulsing in coordinated waves, flickered erratically now. Domes went dark one by one. The automated systems didn't scream. They just shut off, as if acknowledging that the purpose of supporting human life had been removed. I turned toward Biolab 3's direction and saw the lab's roofline collapse inward, not from explosion, but from structural degradation as the sterilant ate through organic supports, wiring insulation, seals, memory being unstitched. Earth had not sent a rescue fleet. Earth had sent a cleanup crew to erase guilt with chemistry. I had to transmit. I had to send something that couldn't be sterilized. But the main comm arrays were in the admin tower, and the admin tower lay under a thick blanket of fog. So I went the other way, toward the old survey uplink on the western ridge, an emergency beacon we used before the colony's primary array came online. It wasn't meant for long range, but it could piggyback on passing traffic if anything crossed the system, if anything cared. I moved low, using structures as cover, staying ahead of the fog's thickest roll. My lungs burned with every breath. My eyes streamed. Above, the cleanup ship's thrusters shifted. repositioning to widen the sterilization cone. It wasn't hunting me specifically. I was just another organic detail it would eventually remove. The western ridge beacon stood on a skeletal tower, half buried in creeping moss. The moss was already browning where fog touched it. I climbed the ladder with shaking hands, each rung slick with condensation. At the top, the beacon housing opened with a manual latch. Inside, the old transmitter blinked weakly. Power was low, signal strength worse. But it was something. I slapped the record switch and leaned close to the mic, trying not to cough my lungs out. "This is Dr. Samuel Voss," I said, voice raw. "Varus 9 has been sterilized under Expansion Authority Containment Protocol. There was no rescue. There is an artifact beneath the colony. No, not an artifact. A bridge. A lattice. It synchronizes perception. It does not spread through air. It spreads through proximity. Through minds close enough to become one." The fog below crawled closer. The colony beneath me disappeared in layers, like someone erasing a drawing with slow patience. I forced myself to continue. The infected were not rabid. They were stabilizing. Earth chose eradication over understanding. If you find this transmission, you must assume there are other anchors, other colonies. The network is older than us. If you send another cleanup crew, you are not saving humanity. You are only teaching the bridge to hide. My throat tightened. Dario's face flashed in my mind, the way he'd shoved me toward the exit corridor, the way he'd stood against Zephyr's certainty with nothing but a trembling sense of right and wrong. "Ensign Dario sacrificed himself to collapse the node inward," I said. "If the bridge is sealed, it is sealed at a cost. If it isn't, if it can reform, then Earth's fear will become prophecy." The transmitter beeped. Low power warning. I looked down. The fog had reached the base of the tower. "Will want to hear," I whispered. "The will want to hear," I whispered. The bridge felt peaceful. It felt like an end to loneliness. That is why it is dangerous. Not because it hates us, because it offers us something we might choose. The beacon's light flickered. I swallowed. "If you are listening," I said, and I didn't know who I meant. Earth, some passing ship, the bridge itself. Remember this colony existed. Remember we were here. Remember that we weren't just a quarantine statistic. The transmitter died. The light went out. For a moment, the only illumination was the pale fog reflecting the dim star, turning the colony into a ghost under milk glass. The hum did not return, not fully. But as the fog reached my boots and the metal beneath me began to feel strangely warm, I realized the silence wasn't emptiness. It was restraint. Something was still under Varus 9. Something sealed. Something listening. And in the back of my mind, so faint I wasn't sure it was real, a geometric afterimage lingered when I blinked. Nested angles folding inward, like a door remembered by muscle. Not open, but not forgotten. Thank you for listening. Varus 9 wasn't destroyed because it was hopeless. It was destroyed because fear moved faster than understanding. That's what makes this story linger. Not the alien structure beneath the colony, but the choice to erase what we don't fully grasp. So I'll leave you with this. If something out there offered humanity an end to loneliness, would we call it evolution or infection? If this transmission stayed with you, let me know your thoughts below. And subscribe if you want to keep exploring the darker edges of the cosmos with me. Until next time, be careful what we choose to fear.